So just to confirm this, at this stage, £71 million raised on the night, and that number often rises in the following days.
Yeah, well done to everyone who took part yesterday. Terrific effort. Good morning. It's Saturday morning. You're watching Breakfast. Now, Khalid Massoud, the man behind the Westminster attacks, was born in Kent and named Adrian Russell Elms. Well, police are now trying to find out what or who turned him into a killer.
One thing we do know is that he was a convert to Islam in later life. Police say their working assumption is that he was inspired by international terrorism. It's
not the first time a Muslim convert has been linked to a major terror attack. One report released over the past few weeks suggested 16% of people convicted of terror offences in the UK were converts.
They include Richard Reed, the shoe bomber who tried to blow up a US passenger plane in 2001. He's now serving a life sentence in the States.
Michael Adebolajo, one of the men who killed Fusilier Lee Rigby in Woolwich, also converted to Islam.
As did Richard Dart, the son of teachers from Dorset, who was jailed for preparing acts of terrorism in 2013.
So, the question many are asking, are converts to Islam particularly vulnerable to becoming extremists? Well, Zahed Amanullah from the Institute for Strategic Dialogue joins us here this morning. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Why do you think, in fact, do you think there is a particular issue with converts?
Well, first of all, I mean, converts to Islam are, by and large, the majority of them are not involved in any kind of activity like this, of course, goes without saying. But people who do convert to a religion, Islam or any other, are in the midst of, looking for an identity, a different identity that they had. And so that's a very vulnerable time for people. So, in my personal experience, the people that I know, for example, who've converted, a lot of time they've converted by marrying into a Muslim family. And we don't see, for example, people in those positions going on to sort of commit these types of acts. It's the people who are converting often on their own, and it depends who's doing the converting, who is guiding them. And that's where we have to look at, for example, extremist recruitment.
But you're quite right to point out that converts to many religions, if it's a decision that you take yourself later in life, quite often are more orthodox, more fundamental in their beliefs.
It's true. I mean, a lot of times when people are looking for that drastic change, they can be more, a little bit more orthodox or conservative, for example. But that alone, of course, is not the driving factor. What matters is how that fits into a pattern of grievances or their past life. We've seen, of course, people with criminality backgrounds, mental health backgrounds, and those are risk factors that play in. But we have to be mindful that it's the type of conversion that makes a difference.
Talk to us from what we know so far, and did a lot in the papers today, trying to piece together Khalid Massoud and just work out the various parts of his life, because on the face of it, it's quite confusing. We see these pictures, people are talking about him when he was a child. Then in later life, we know he got in trouble with the law. What sort of picture is emerging for you?
Well, obviously, we don't want to speculate too much. I mean, the key factor here is was he a lone actor or was he working with other people? Obviously, that remains to be seen. But in terms of the pattern of behavior that we've seen in his life, we've seen the troubled background, for example, and the prison time that he's served. All of these things show that there is a search for stability in his life, his married life, and so forth. These things do play a part. We know that the risk factors can include psychological problems as well, and so there is evidence here which has been the case in other lone actor instances in Europe.
And your organisation looks at indicators, signs, don't they, of possible indicators of communications. What would the investigators now be looking at in terms of what signs there may have been in the build-up?
Well, as I mentioned before, the risk factors themselves aren't alone, aren't the only things we need to look at. What we do need to look at is what ideology was introduced to this person that caused him to turn those risk factors into an actual threat of violence and terrorism. And often that is extremist recruitment, which can happen online and offline. There's indications, for example, they may have met with other people before the incident. We would need to find out if those people were, influencing him to commit this act. But it's that extremist ideology that plays into the vulnerability of the individual that then leads them to possibly commit a terrorist act. So that can be messaging, for example, online. We work on a lot of counter-narrative messaging with civil society organizations to get them to intercept that extremist recruitment to vulnerable people. And it's early days, but we've done a lot of pilot studies to show that that strategy can work, but it needs to be done on a mass scale.
Typically, can this kind of radicalization happen actually quite quickly?
It can happen quickly. Again, it depends on the psychological makeup of the individual, what is driving them, the grievances driving them. But it's that recruitment that often makes the difference, and that's why it's important for intelligence services to find out if there's anyone who has influenced him, Masood, in the last few days.
And indeed whether he has a current network of people.
Absolutely.
Around him, yeah.
That is really critical, because when we identify that, then we can identify the type of messaging, and first of all, from a logistic point of view, but also the messaging itself that convinced him that this was an act that he needed to take.
So thank you very much for your time this
My
morning. So I had Amanullah, who's from the Institute for Strategic Dialogue.
Good morning. It's 19 minutes past 7. You're watching Breakfast from BBC News. The main stories this morning.